Welcome to Tuesday Night Takes. We are just now wrapping up the NFL draft, and we've had a couple days to sit on it, and a lot of takeaways. There's been, what are we? 3 days post draft, and it's just the draft is a fun time. We'll say that, and we're ready to just dive right into it. We're not going to take any time here. Let's go ahead and get straight into today's episode because who knows how long this one might take. Starting off, I just want to ask, do you have any big takeaways from this draft that, just stand out to you?
Yeah, one thing that really shocked me was, so at the top of the first round, obviously there were rumors all around the quarterbacks regarding, who we all knew Caleb Williams to go one. We weren't really certain who Washington was going to go with it to. As we got closer to the draft, we were a little bit more certain that it would be Jaden Daniels, which it ended up being. But there was still speculation around whether it would be May or McCarthy. And then falling down to 3, it was whether or not New England would trade out, because there were teams calling them about potentially moving up to the third spot to get a guy like a Drake May or potentially Jaden Daniels if Washington passed on him. But just in regards to that, comparing the rumors with what happened in the draft, one of my biggest takeaways is that pre-draft rumors mean pretty much nothing. Most everyone was certain that we were going to see Minnesota use both of those first-round picks they had at 11 and 23 and move up to either 4 or 5 with Arizona or with Los Angeles to grab McCarthy. And what do you know? Both of those two teams, they stick and pick Marvin Harrison and Joe Alt, and the Vikings, they only have to move up 1 pick with the Jets to grab McCarthy at 10. We were also certain that trade up was going to happen, and it just didn't. It never did. And the other interesting thing is that if the rumors are that a team is going to move up that far to get a guy like McCarthy, you would assume that if Minnesota didn't trade up, which they didn't, another team like perhaps the Raiders, the Broncos would have leapfrog them into the top 10 to grab McCarthy if he's that level of prospect. But what we saw is that he just wasn't regarded as that level of a prospect, which we shouldn't be surprised by because he rose so fast. But, all the rumors surrounding where J.J. McCarthy was going to go, we knew he was going to go first round because of the positional value of a quarterback, but he just wasn't as highly regarded as we were convinced that he was, and so that's why the Vikings were able to get him there at 10.
Yeah, I mean, that's just positional value. 6 quarterbacks in the first 12. It's just crazy how much that means, and really just that quarterback run, the 6 and the 12, just is different, and that's just kind of the modern NFL. The quarterback's so important that even players like Penix and Nix, who we'll talk about later for sure, they don't necessarily. Just because they may not be the best prospect, the position they play means more. I'll give you one of my takeaways real quick, and it kind of goes into that. It's simply just that the offense in round 1, there was 23 offensive players taken out of 32 picks. So, 8 defenders if I'm counting correctly? Not
9.
9? Okay, yeah, thank you.
8, 9, whatever,
Yeah, same thing, either way. No, just that's hefty. That is very one-sided. But then in round 2, we see 20 defensive players. Assuming I counted that one right as well, knowing my math skills. It's just the defense. It's kind of a offense is what dominates the league right now. But the defense, you have to keep it together, and we see a lot of depth in that defense coming in the not quite as early, but early rounds, right? So just kind of a interesting takeaway. I wonder if we were to look back at other drafts, so we noticed that even in other drafts where the offense is heavy, maybe I wonder if round 2 the defense is substantially heavier as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, some of that for sure has to do with the era that we're in currently, where it's an offense dominant league. But on the other hand, I think that was really just the nature of this class. I mean, you had 6 quarterbacks who, I think some people could argue that maybe not all 6 of them were worthy of first round picks, but there were teams that needed quarterbacks desperately, and so it elevated their stock. it was a very top heavy receiver class where you have a lot of guys who are worthy of either being a top, top 5 pick, top 10 pick, or being a mid late first round pick or receiver. And then you've got a strong tackle class as well. And just so happens that right now those are 3 of the most important positions for teams to have in this era of football that we're in right now. And so, I think it was just extremely beneficial that this class was so strong at those 3 positions. And so, and it also, it was a little bit weaker top heavy. The top of this class of defenders that came out was a little bit weaker than we've seen in past years. You don't really have that one defender like think of a Myles Garrett when he came out, or a Sauce Gardner, who it's like, those guys are going to be top 5 picks and they're probably going to be pretty darn good too. There wasn't a guy like that. I think was our first defender off the board was Leatu Latu, who he's certainly got his concerns. He's not necessarily a generational edge prospect, but he's a really good edge prospect, and he comes with severe medical concerns too. Maybe not as severe as they were made out to be, but I think it's mostly just the nature of this class is that it was just so top heavy offense, and the defenders were just pushed down the board.
Yeah, I think so as well. Do you have any other takeaways in this year's draft?
Yeah, just something that I think perhaps we already knew, but in case it wasn't something that everyone was aware of, the first round is almost exclusively for positional value. We have 6 quarterbacks that go round 1. I believe was there 6 receivers that went round 1 as well? 7. So that's 13. And then offensive tackle, which if you want to slot Graham Barton in there with tackle, given his flexibility, I believe we had 8. Yeah. 8 tackles go round 1. Mm-hmm. That's 21 of the 2/3 of the first round was dedicated to quarterback, receiver, and offensive tackle. Mm-hmm. Which anymore, those are the 3 most important positions on the offensive side of the ball, which is nowadays the most important side of the ball. That's what the first round is for. It's for getting those talented players at those highly needed positions. And so that's when you see guys get pushed down the board, like a Johnny Newton, who we'll talk about later in the class, who is certainly first round worthy, but slides to the top of the second just because you've got teams who desperately need a tackle, and that's such an important position of need for every team nowadays, getting that guy who can seal off the edge for your quarterback. And yeah, I think that's something that perhaps was already common knowledge, but I think it was heavily reinforced this year. I don't think we've ever seen a first round like this where it's so predictable in the sense that it's like, these are the positions that teams need to succeed nowadays, and so that's who they're going to take first round.
Right. Yeah. I mean, other than that, I'm pretty sure if I'm not mistaken, the only other player was Brock Bowers, who in another class that didn't have a ton of quarterbacks, a ton of tackles, a ton of receivers. That guy probably ends up a top 7 pick. I mean, He's a great player at any position. Like if the positional grade at any position, how good he is at being tight end. Anybody at that level of being any position would be taken very, very highly if it was not for this class.
Right.
So yeah, that's just major. And I don't have any other takeaways really. That was my only one. If you don't have any other, we will move on.
That's all I got for takeaways. Yeah.
All right, now to address the absolute elephant in the room, crushing every table and everything else that we know. Michael Penix at 8. We were watching the draft together, and we see Ian Rappaport show up on the TV, and he says that the Falcons might actually be considering Michael Penix Jr. here. And everybody just kind of like, surely not. Right? That was kind of just everybody like, yeah, they're considering it. Me, yeah, I would too.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they did it.
It was about 30 seconds later. It was like boom, boom.
Yeah, and
God.
Yeah, it just was one of the most. I just don't understand it. I don't understand it because To start off with, in my opinion, Penix, to me, with his age, with his injury concerns, with his play style, he was the sixth best quarterback, in my opinion, out of the six. And he wasn't a first-round player, in my opinion. Is he, the quarterback, that quarterback positional value might push him to the back of a first-round player, simply alone that quarterback value. But as a whole, he wasn't a first-round player. I think he would have been taken pretty quickly in the second round, but maybe somebody grabs him because of that fifth-year option or something. No, he went 8 after paying Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed, not telling Kirk Cousins about it. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I've sort of listened around to other much more notable NFL media people on YouTube, whatnot, and just listen to what they have to say. And it's generally a consensus. It's not about Michael Penix, the player, as much as it is the situation that he was drafted into. Michael Penix, is he worth a first-round pick? Sure. Quarterback, like you said, positional value of being a quarterback, that's gonna boost your stock some. I'm also not a huge fan of him. If you want to argue him up to QB5, I'm fine with that. Maybe even 4. But if I had to rank him, he's my 6 as well. But it wasn't about as much the talent of the player Michael Penix is as it is the situation. You pay. I'm gonna ramble here for a little bit. So as you already said, you pay Kirk Cousins. You just signed him to a 4-year deal. You jump through many hoops to go get Kirk Cousins. Some very questionable things that happened in that process.
Yeah, you might get penalized for that. Some tampering.
Right. All the hoops he had to jump through with the big tampering ordeal. You get your guy. So you would expect, now that you finally have gotten your quote-unquote franchise quarterback, you're going to go do everything you can this offseason to build around him, right? Because you paid him as if he was going to be your guy that you build around. And they didn't even give Kirk an opportunity to prove that he is no longer the type of quarterback that you can win with. He hasn't even played a game yet. And I understand maybe if there's injury concern, if he's going to come back and be the same quarterback that he was before after the Achilles. But my thought is that if that was a concern, they wouldn't have signed him 4 years, $100 million guaranteed. You would have seen a 2-year deal, perhaps, if that was a concern. So clearly the 4-year deal was not it proved that the injury potential of not being able to rebound from the injury was not a concern of theirs.
Right.
And then also, if you are going to go out and draft a quarterback round 1 to be Kirk's predecessor, to sit behind him for some time and wait and refine some of those mechanics and tools, abilities, whatnot, before you put him out on the field, why the 24-year-old prospect?
Right.
Why him? Why the guy with the long list of an injury history, right? And the limited ceiling. I think everybody would agree that he's one of those high floor, lower ceiling type of players. You had J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix available there. I think both of those guys, personally, I believe they both have higher ceilings than Michael Penix does. Why is it that you draft the older, lower potential quarterback to fill in for Kirk whenever the time comes?
Right.
Even so, you sign Kirk to that contract essentially to keep his contract from being a complete waste of money. You're starting him for 2 seasons, unless something happens. Kirk gets injured and he retires after a season or something unexpected. Say that happens. He's going to play for 2 years. He's going to be your starter for 2 years, which means that at the very earliest, you're seeing Michael Penix start as a 26-year-old rookie.
Yeah. When at that point, if you draft McCarthy in 2 years, he's 23, not even as old as Penix is now.
Right. I don't know. And it sucks. It sucks for Kirk because, as he didn't know about drafting Penix until they were on the clock. They give him a call, say, hey, we're going to take Penix. We're going to take a quarterback. There's no telling what Kirk was thinking. It's a stab in the back if I've ever seen one. But I don't know. It's just it. I don't understand it. A lot of people are not as critical on them anymore as they were previously. I'm just as critical now as I was at the time that I saw the pick, because I think it's awful. It's like, yeah, cool, you got a decent quarterback prospect, but so what? You already have your quarterback for the foreseeable future. Why are you even thinking that far ahead?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things is so you said the slap in the backstabbing that they did to Kirk Cousins already. Not only him, I think this is something that will actually probably severely hurt their chances with other players, whether it be their own players. Like let's just throw out a random name here, AJ Terrell. A homegrown drafted guy. When he goes up for his next contract, he might be like, hey, they did that to Kirk, the guy they just paid like starter guaranteed money. What are they going to do to me? Like, that's going to be an issue because you don't pay a guy this much to go draft his backup in the first round. And, I've seen the claims of, just how you're talking about how people aren't as critical. I don't get that. This is probably one of the worst picks overall. It's not about the player. It's about the situation, as you said. This is one of the worst picks we've seen in a long time.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Because the misuse of assets. If you were going to draft Michael Penix, if you were that high on him, and no one thought he was going top 10, let's just stop there. Like, no one really thought that. If you were going to draft him at 8, and because they were apparently floored with him and everything, they knew they were going to do that. Why pay Kirk? Why not go spend half of the money on a really great edge rusher? Why not go spend a third of the money on a really good receiver too? And then you have another $20 million left to go do whatever else with. This doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, and I've seen the comp from the whole Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love thing. That is irrelevant. It's not the same. Kirk Cousins hasn't been in Atlanta for 15 years. He's not played for this team for 15 years, hasn't built this repertoire with the GM, with the owner, to know how they're going to treat him. He just got there, and you've already burnt the bridge. Like, if Kirk Cousins wasn't such a chilled, relaxed dude, I think he'd be gone already. I think he'd already have requested a trade. I don't think that'd be a problem. And the GM did say that Penix won't touch Kirk. So why did you draft him at 8? Oh, we don't think we're going to be good enough or we don't think we're going to be bad enough to ever be up here again. And you got him above two guys who were debatably better than him, especially one guy who's considered better than him as a prospect and younger in McCarthy. And do you really think you're going to be that good? Have you looked at your roster? Have you been a GM, a good GM? Because I know that the Falcons are supposed to be the betting favorite in this division. Says who? Right now, I would take the Bucs over them, especially after last year. I would take. I think the Saints in Derek Carr's second year could improve. That one's a bit more on the border. But why can't the Panthers improve with Bryce Young's second year?
Especially after the offseason that they've had. Oh my goodness.
Getting a good receiver in Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette for whatever he's worth, and Jatavian Sanders as well, like just weapons and help and like getting Dave Canales, all that stuff. And you really think you're comfortable enough to go ahead and make this stupid move? There's just no explaining this in a good way. I don't think there is any explaining this in a good way.
Yeah, before all this madness unfolded with the Falcons, I was not as high on them as a lot of people are. I think it's absolutely ridiculous to call them to say that they're on a Super Bowl run right now. I think you got to get in the playoffs first.
Right.
And I wasn't a massive fan of the Kirk signing either. Is he a good quarterback? Sure. He is coming off of an injury. He's getting up there. And honestly, I don't think what the Falcons have right now is any better than what the Vikings had. Right. I think if Kirk wasn't able to win with the Vikings, I'll have to see it to believe it. But I don't think he can win with the Falcons because I don't view them in any better position, especially after their coaching hires. Right. Raheem Morris, feels like they really, it's low hanging fruit to me. He's already proven to not have it as a head coach. He does not have a good track record as a head coach in the NFL. And Zach Robinson is a first time OC. There's so much improvement there. What makes you think that how arrogant do you have to be to think that you are Super Bowl bound because you signed the 36-year-old quarterback coming off of an Achilles injury and you hired an unproven he's not even an unproven head coach. He is proven to not be a good head coach. First time play caller, unproven weapons on offense. Kyle Pitts, who knows if he's going to be any decent. Bijan's a good talent. He's a great talent. Drake London's a good talent. They got this stuff, whatever. I don't think it's any better than what the Vikings had, so I don't see any reason why Kirk Cousins is going to come in and make them a Super Bowl contender. Yeah. With that being said, why are you taking your quarterback of the even further future in the top 10? Why not trade? If you want to take a quarterback, then trade down, right? Yeah. Green Bay didn't trade up to take Jordan Love. They let him fall to him. Also with Jordan Love in that comp, like you said with Aaron Rodgers, they're completely different situations than Kirk Cousins. Jordan Love is also completely different as a prospect than Michael Penix is. Jordan Love was much more he's the type of quarterback that you draft to sit behind a starter. Low floor, but a high ceiling. 21 years old coming out, not Michael Penix, who was the exact opposite. Higher floor, lower ceiling, 24 years old. Like, nothing about it makes sense. It's ridiculous. I can't in any way credit them for the pick. No. Michael Penix, fine prospect. Falcons made a horrible, horrible decision there. Their entire franchise will have to pay for it, and sadly, Michael Penix will as well. I don't see this as anything less than a hindrance on his career.
Right. I'm gonna bring up two final things on this before we run this into every bit of the ground. One, we talk about Kirk and how he's upset. You can't imagine Penix is very happy about this either to a point. If he's being told that as a guy who a lot of people say, which I don't agree with this, but a lot of people have said before the draft that he might be the most ready to start day one. Well, he's not going to start for a minimum 2 years, probably 3, maybe 4. You can't imagine that's exciting for him because now he gets drafted to go sit around and do nothing for a while. And not to mention everybody talking about it on social media and just him having to hear about it, right? That's annoying. But also, they back all that up, but wait, there's more. We drafted Rucororo over Johnny Newton, over Braden Fisk, over I don't even who else. Like, the rest of their draft class stinks. Yeah. Braylon Trice, who was clearly mentioned as a dud of an edge prospect. Brandon Dorless, Zion Lowe, 2 more defensive tackles. Has anybody reminded them they don't have a starting edge rusher on their roster, including Braylon Trice? And they draft 3 D tackles? Like, J.D. Bertrand's probably the only pick I like here. Honestly, I like J.D. Bertrand in the 5th round. That's solid. But they top the Penix pick off with that. Okay, final thing. Over under how many years Terry Fontenot lasts on this team? I give him about 30 more minutes.
I'll give him a year. Yeah. See, this is the type. This is the type of move that gets you fired, and you never come close to getting a position like this with another franchise ever again.
He'll be a regional scout in Madden before you know it, bro. Like, that's no national scout. He's the northeastern scout in Madden.
Yeah.
Out. Like, get out of here.
Right.
Like, all right. Let's go ahead and move on. Assuming, are you good? Nothing else there to?
I have nothing else to say.
Yeah. Let's move on. So, let's shed some light here. Biggest winner of the NFL draft. What team won the draft to you?
Yeah, we already touched on this team a little bit. They'll be facing the Falcons 2 times this year. The Panthers, I am a huge fan of their draft. Not just with the players they got, but what role those players play in where the Panthers are at right now. They did exactly as they should be. Maybe you could say they should have done this a year sooner. Putting weapons around Bryce Young, but Man, did they. And this kind of goes hand in hand with their offseason they already had. They had a stronger corner room, and so they took one of their better guys and flipped him for a nice separator receiver who will be a good safety valve and weapon for Bryce Young to work with. And then they come into this draft and they grab a deep threat in Xavier Legette, who I think is a fantastic prospect. I was really hoping that he would fall to New England in the second round, that we might be able to grab him there, but he was drafted in the first round for a reason. And then they go out and get Jonathan Brooks, who's one of the top running back prospects. He'll be ready for training camp. From what I last heard, he'll be able to suit up. He'll be good by the time the season comes around, coming off that ACL injury. A nice prospect. Aside from Chuba Hubbard, he's a decent running back. Miles Sanders was an awful signing. He's not good. Trevin Wallace, he's a linebacker, so I'm not really gonna, for the sake of why I think the Panthers had a good draft, I'm not gonna bother talking about him. But then Jatavion Sanders, top of the fourth round, what a get there. A guy like him who's an excellent receiving tight end prospect, great athlete, amazing hands. He has like 10-inch hands. Hands are massive. He's catching everything. Position of need for them, tight end. I mean, they just put weapons and weapons around Bryce Young. They're putting him in a position to succeed. Now all we need for Bryce Young is the O-line to continue to develop. Guys like Ikem Ekwonu, who you drafted 2 years ago, he came out a little bit raw as a tackle, and so we hope that we can see in this third year him sort of jump a little bit and live up to the potential that he had coming out. But man, I love the Panthers draft. I think they've had a fantastic offseason. And you know what? If they have to give up a little bit defensively, that is okay, because what you do is you put guys around your franchise quarterback to see, all right, is this our guy? And that's what they're doing. And so now we'll really have a good tell on what type of quarterback Bryce Young will be. So long as these aren't all dud draft picks, which I think you put Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, Jonathan Brooks, and Jatavion Sanders in the same offense. At least two of those guys are going to be studs, in my opinion, in that offense, all working together. I think Bryce Young's actually going to have a competent offense, and I think he's going to, at the very least, flip the script a little bit and prove to be a worthwhile quarterback for the time being. I love the Panthers draft and their offseason.
I actually personally wasn't the biggest fan of the Panthers class, and it was mainly just because of a few, it's just kind of nitpicking a little bit. One, the Xavier Legette pick. I don't mind Xavier Legette. However, I'm a big Adonai Mitchell guy, and I just don't – I know he slid, and there's probably a reason for that, whatever, but I still don't like the fact that Xavier Legette went over Adonai Mitchell. I just don't think he will be better. I think we're kind of actually in the same boat there. Nothing against Legette. It's just I think A.D. Mitchell would have been a much better player.
I think I like Legette's fit better with their offense than I would have A.D. Mitchell, because I think Xavier Legette gives you more of that physical downfield deep threat than A.D. Mitchell would. A.D. Mitchell he can kind of give you a little bit of everything.
Right.
With Xavier Legette, he's so much more of a physical presence. He'll just bully you downfield. I like that he can fit into that offense and sort of exclusively be the DK Metcalf type guy, where they're not asking you to run the entire route tree, just be really good at a few different things. And I think Xavier Legette can do that extremely well.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to go to my next one, Jonathan Brooks. Once again, nothing against Jonathan Brooks. I just think Trey Benson's better. I think Trey Benson probably fits this offense better. Trevin Wallace, we'll skip over him. We're talking about the offense here. Jatavion Sanders. Oh, you can have that one. That's a great pick. I really thought he might have been like a second-round guy. Thought he was that. If somebody took him in the second round, I was completely fine with that. That was fine. No problem there. And they fixed their offensive line in the offseason. They got, who was it, Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. Am I correct on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They cleaned up the O-line, and we're not worried about that anymore. So, they did help Bryce Young. Don't get me wrong. The only reason I didn't love their draft was because I just thought there was multiple players at the same positions that they took that were better. But that's pretty nitpicky, I'll be honest. So I'll leave them alone there. Anything else you have to add there?
No, I think I kind of ran a little bit with my Panthers selection there for the winner. Who you got for your winner?
All right, technical difficulties there. Either way, we got to go in somehow, some way. But my biggest winner of the 2024 NFL Draft. Well, I think in back-to-back years now, we've had the same winner. The entire state of Pennsylvania has won because the top two draft classes, in my opinion, and I'm really trying not to be biased here, are the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles. I think for 2 years straight, they both have won the draft, but I am going to say that the predominant winner is the Philadelphia Eagles. Dude, they can't keep getting away with this. Like Quinion Mitchell, a guy who we all thought was gone at 12, falls in their lap. Their biggest position need just falls in their lap. And then my favorite corner in the draft, and I think either way you look at it, the top two corners in the whole draft, they get both of them because Cooper DeJean falls to 40. What are we doing? What are we doing? How are we letting these people continue to get the best players in the draft? And then Jeremiah Trotter in round 5, I don't know how he ends up there. I don't see, because he's 6 foot tall. Like, are we really worried about that? Like, get out of here, dude. I think he was probably my second linebacker by the end of the period of the draft. My second favorite linebacker. They get Will Shipley. I mean, not the best player ever, but like I think he's really solid in the value they got him. I believe round 4. Really solid there to be a guy who can take some snaps away from Saquon, keep him healthy. I mean, this team is ridiculous. Every single year, they seem to have probably the best class, the best players, and they just land in their lap. It makes no sense. It really doesn't to me. I'm trying to think. Jalix Hunt in the 3rd round, then just getting them some extra depth at receiver. It's just stupid, just absolutely stupid. Any thoughts on Phillies draft?
Yeah, I mean, I love the top of their draft. Getting I, I mocked them Cooper DeJean in round 1.
Right.
I thought for sure Quentin Mitchell falling to 22 was not even in the conversation.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be gone by then. For him to fall, for him alone to fall to 22, fantastic for the Eagles. Right,
Absolutely.
like steal of a pick at 22. And then in the 2nd round, Cooper DeJean, who I think at least a few, I was not the only one that mocked Cooper DeJean to the Eagles. For him to
No.
fall to them in round 2, and they can double dip at D-back, which was a super weak position of theirs. Oh my gosh. Like, I mean, they nailed it. They'd have been silly to pass on either one of them,
Yeah.
and I mean they took them, and it's positions of need. They got lucky. They got real lucky.
I'm a firm
Yeah.
believer if Quinion Mitchell was gone at 22, they were taking Cooper DeJean. Like, I think Cooper DeJean was a top 20 player in this draft. I don't think that's debatable, really. I wanted him on the Steelers very, very badly. I mean, just crazy. And then the rest of their draft, I think, they didn't have any grand slam home runs or anything, but like still really good picks down the board. Just stupid. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Trotter and Shipley and Jalix Hunt, just stupid, man. Just
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything else you have on that one?
No, man. I mean, they had a great draft, top
Yeah.
of the draft,
Yeah.
fantastic. They got some good players down the board as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of giving Pittsburgh their little run too. I mean, they did have a really good draft as well last year and this year, getting a position of need that when it happened, Troy Fatanu, I didn't love it the most. I thought it was good. I had nothing wrong with it, but getting Zach Frazier, getting Peyton Wilson at 98, Roman Wilson at 84, and then who was their next pick? Oh, the McCormick, the guard from South Dakota State. Just a really good draft for needs. And I think the thing that both of those teams did that really won it for me is not only get really good players that are going to play because they have to and they need to. They got guys who, we're not sitting here taking a player at 8 who's not going to play for 4 years. We're sitting here taking guys who are going to come in and make impact now. That's huge. I think that's a major deal for both of those teams.
Yeah.
Any other winners or things you have, or we can go to losers, either one.
Panthers were my big winners, but no, I'd have to agree with your picks. There's a very good chance that we see 3 rookies starting on the O-line for the Steelers this year, which could be a good thing or it could be an awfully scary thing.
Yeah,
But
I think
with
it'll be
the
two, but the McCormick, I think it ends up being a little bit more developmental, but either way, he'll be fine.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, good draft for both of those Philly teams. Pennsylvania, excuse
Yeah,
me.
right.
Uh,
So now we'll talk about our biggest losers. Nathan, who is your biggest loser of this draft?
Yeah, I've got the Titans. I just don't really like their draft that much. JC Latham at 7, I thought that was a bit of a reach. I understand that a lot of people, pretty much everyone, slotted Joe Alt here in at 7 for the Titans because we didn't expect the Chargers to grab him at 5. But even still, I think, I'm okay with the pick. It's a position of desperate need, and the guy who you really wanted got taken unexpectedly before you. And so, if JC Latham's the guy they liked, then, there's no point in trading back a few picks and risking him being taken. But personally, I'm just not a huge fan of him. I just don't know that he'll be able to sustain out there at tackle with the speed that we have coming off the edge nowadays in the NFL. I worry about his athleticism. Most people think he'd be better as just a big, massive mauling guard. So I don't know what type of upside he has out there at tackle. I think he could be a guy who's really taken advantage of by speed rushers. So I worry about that pick. But then, I think about the Titans, and they're kind of similar to my Patriots in a way that they just don't really have a lot of speed and athleticism at the skill positions. They get rid of Derek. Really, all they've got is Tyjae Spears, and that's not a bell cow type guy. You don't want him taking 25 touches a game. And then past that, you've got an aging DeAndre Hopkins. Traylon Burks has been somewhat of a disappointment so far. So, I mean, I hope to see him turn it around personally. But, I mean, there's just not a whole lot of athleticism here on this Titans team. And you see him go with a big, massive offensive tackle, a big, massive defensive tackle with their first two picks. Both fine players, but I feel like they could have done something a little bit better with those value picks. And, Cedric Gray in the 4th round, he's a fine player, a little bit of an undersized linebacker. But not it's not one of those value positions where I don't know. There just weren't a whole lot of guys here that I was a big fan of. I don't know that I don't know that the Titans really got a whole lot better. I kind of thought that with oh my gosh, I'm blanking his name, with Vrabel leaving, I thought you might see a little bit of a shift. Maybe they go out and try to get more skill guys to help out Will Levis to see if he's going to be their guy for the future. Now that Callahan's in Tennessee now in their head coaching position, but I don't know. I don't know that the Titans really got a whole lot better. It kind of felt like just I'm just not a huge fan. I'm just not a huge fan of their picks.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, I'm not really the highest on Latham either. I don't think he's the best tackle available at this point. Also, I don't think he plays tackle either. T'Vondre Sweat, I like the player, but probably a little early. I think they could have waited on him considering the DWI and all the interest of that and all the things that
Yeah.
happened prior to the draft. And waiting till the 6th round to get your first weapon when your weapons are – the best word you can give them is deteriorating because of the fact that they have a couple of names, but they're all just not, let's say Traylon Burks, former first-round pick. Good name, hasn't worked out. D-Hop
Mm-hmm.
is D-Hop. I mean, don't have to say a whole lot there. However, he's, 30-something, and he's only getting worse. So, like, their weapons just aren't really there anymore, and you waited till the 6th round to get another weapon for your second-year quarterback. I just don't get that at all.
Yeah.
My biggest loser in this draft is actually going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll start off by saying I don't mind some of the players they got, but it's just the fact of how they did it. Xavier Worthy. I don't think he was a first-round player except for to the Chiefs. And they traded up to get him. I really don't believe that he would have been taken by anybody else because who was before them? Buffalo. They're not taking Worthy. That's not the kind of receiver they needed. After Buffalo was, I don't exactly know off the top of my head, maybe Detroit or something like that. I don't know.
At 29, I think it was Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit, they're not taking Worthy either. They have what's his name, Jamison Williams. Then Baltimore, they're not. They might go receiver, but not in round one because they're not a team that takes back to back, you know, first round receivers. Actually, it was Dallas because they traded down. That's what it was. But they weren't taking receiver either. Not Detroit. Ricky Pearsall to the Niners. Okay, I mean, did I think they were going to go wide receiver? No, but if you told me they were going wide receiver, I would not pick Worthy for them. Not at all. And so you land up at 32 with Xavier Worthy, and that's kind of where the grade comes in. You traded up for a guy that would have been there. Can you argue maybe somebody trades up into round one, pick 30 to grab him? I guess, but do we really think that would happen? Do we really think somebody liked this guy enough for that? He's not just a speed guy. He has decent route running abilities and things like that, but I just don't think he was that highly sought after to have to trade up for. And then in the second round, you get Kingsley Suamataia. Fine tackle, but very, very raw. I mean, just, he's not going to be playing, and if he is, you're probably not going to be in a good spot for a while.
Yeah.
My favorite pick of theirs, honestly, in the entire draft was Kamal Hadden from Tennessee. I like Kamal Hadden, and in the sixth round, I think that was a pretty solid pick. However, if your best pick is in the sixth round, that's just not a good way to start. Now, they don't touch the Falcons with a 10-foot pole. They don't even get close to being as bad as the Falcons draft was, but they're still my loser outside of the Falcons.
Oh yeah, Falcon. Everyone, it's a unanimous biggest L for the Falcons. We chose to exclude them for this little segment, but
Right.
no, I mean, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with the Xavier Worthy pick. I mean, everyone would agree that Kansas City is the best landing spot for Xavier Worthy.
Sure, yeah.
I think, I don't know that they had to trade up. Maybe they did, maybe they heard some whispers that, I mean, who knows? Perhaps the Niners would have taken Xavier Worthy. I think if he was used correctly in the Niners offense, then that would be a horrifying nightmare to have to deal with. But, I think there had been a decent chance that they could have grabbed him at 32, but, it was an all right pick. Kingsley Suamataia, he's just not a huge fan of him either. He's so raw. Didn't play against the top level competition. Played against the BYU level schools. He's not going up against the type of guys that are going to be on NFL practice squads and rosters. These are guys who are going to be accountants in a year, and so it's like not as much to the degree as maybe a D2 school perhaps, but a raw tackle from a not Power 5 school, I don't know. He was a guy I was not a huge fan of, and then the rest of the draft was all right. Jared Wiley in the fourth, decent value. Jaden Hicks in the fourth was good value, but I don't know. I guess it's just I would have expected a little bit better from the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that this is kind of a trend too. I think last year's draft was a little bit underwhelming as well. I don't know exactly who it was off the top of my head they took, but I do know that, their first round pick, Anudike Uzoma, just wasn't really the greatest player. Didn't play this past year to top that off. Then I think they may have gotten like a single. I'm looking it up right now because I'm trying to make sure of who they got. I think they had a safety who played quite a bit in their rookie lineup last year, but I mean, obviously got Rashee Rice, but like other than him, yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Other than Rashee Rice, yeah, Chamari Connors, who I'm thinking of, he did play a little bit. He was fine, but nothing that stands out. So that's two back-to-back drafts where, you really didn't get anything that great, and your best player was a bottom second-round player who turned out to be well, but we'll see what he even gets on the field anymore with his issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else to have on your loser of this draft?
No, aside from the Falcons, which we've already beat that horse to death. I wasn't a fan of the Cowboys draft either. I figure they were kind of an honorable mention. I think they could have used their picks a little bit better in terms of drafting positions, more of a need for them. Maybe not taking a second edge rusher in the second round, even though I like Marshawn Nealon.
Yeah.
Tyler Guyton, if he's playing early, then I don't know that he's going to do very well. He's kind of in a similar boat as Kingsley Suamataia. They're both pretty raw, with some upside there, but both pretty raw right now. So yeah, they're honorable mention of mine. They're pretty similar with the Titans in that I think they could have used their picks a little bit more in a helpful. I don't know. I think they didn't quite address the positions most of need, but I'm not a general manager, so what does that mean? What does that matter?
I got you. So we're going to move into our final segment about our shocking picks, whether good or bad. They could be good shocking, bad shocking, whatever. Nathan, I'll start with you. What is your most shocking, or some of your most shocking picks, good or bad?
Yeah, so the thing that surprised me the most initially was AD Mitchell's slide, which in our previous draft videos that we've done, I don't think we've had a single mock where we've only done 2 or 3 mocks, I believe, but in each one we have AD Mitchell round 1.
Yeah.
We both like him a lot, so to see him slide all the way to 52 to the Colts was kind of shocking. I wasn't super surprised to see him fall out of the first round because I'd seen numerous mocks where he was a round 2 guy, but he was usually a top of round 2 guy. So I was like, okay, he'll be one of those guys who first 5 picks, day 2, he's coming off the board.
Yeah.
And then the first 5 picks pass, and you see receivers getting drafted ahead of him. Guys like Jalen Polk get drafted ahead of him.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what's going on here? This is not right. And he falls all the way to pick 20 in the second round. He's the 11th wide receiver taken.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had him as a wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. He's one of those top guys who you'd expect to be going in round 1. And he's got all the physical, athletic abilities, the traits. He's got the frame, about a 6'2.5", 200-pound frame, 4.35 40. I mean, he's got speed. He can work inside and out. It seems like a guy to me that you draft first round strictly because of the traits. Yeah, the production wasn't quite there at Texas, but I mean, look at how many mouths they had to feed. Someone had to get docked, and I think it just happened to be him. I think the Colts got an absolute steal. I think he's a fantastic pick for them, given that they have Pittman and Josh Downs who can work underneath, intermediate, and you can let AD Mitchell work vertically up and down the field. So I think fantastic pairing there.
Yeah, that's one of mine as well. Like you said, we were both super high on him. I think I could have him as high as my wide receiver 4 in this class, and that's him. I think him versus Brian Thomas was the best indication right there to me. That was like the best pairing of prospect to me. You obviously have Marvin, Neighbors, Adunze, whichever order you put them in, and after that, to me, it was either AD Mitchell or Brian Thomas. I don't care which way you put him, but that's who it was. And the fact that he fell to 52, the 11th receiver, and he might be outside of the top 3. He probably is the most high upside of that like dominant number 1 type of wide receiver. That's an absolute steal. Good job for the Colts. That's all I can say there. Really. Since you take that one, I'll kind of go to my next one. I'm gonna combine 3 together here, and it is really the Eagles getting DeJean, Shipley, and Trotter. To me, I think the values of all 3 of those guys was really good. DeJean at 40. This guy's a top 20 player, and you got him at pick 40. I don't need to say anything else. Trotter in the 5th, I really thought he'd be gone by about early 3rd round, and that was if he fell, honestly. I thought he was a second-round guy. He got docked apparently because he was 6 foot tall. I don't understand that at all. Like, really, I don't. I just, whatever. I think he is a very good linebacker prospect, and you know what? He'll fit right into Philly. They need it. And then Shipley, he was a bit more fair value, but I think for what he's going to be able to do for Philadelphia, it makes a lot of sense. He's going to be able to do, he can be a receiving back. He can be, your third down back, whatever you want him to do. But the best part about that is it's a reliable guy who can take away snaps from Saquon Barkley so he doesn't end up getting his knees chopped in half every other game. Like, it's a good way to just take the load off of Saquon. And so that's what I have for my first, best, most shocking picks.
Yeah, I think I'm similar with you on the Will Shipley pick that, I think that's reasonable value for him in the 4th round. I'd be interested to see, how much work he gets this next season. He's obviously, you got Saquon there. He's not going to by any means he's not taking touches away from Saquon. Saquon's also one of those guys that you want to get the ball in his hands however you can, which means run game or pass game. I see Will Shipley more as a pass game guy, maybe put him in there on third down to I don't know, a little dump off stuff like that. I see him doing that more so in his NFL career. So I'll be interested to see, if he's able to find his way onto the field this first year, or if they pretty much leave Saquon to take up all the receiving work out of the backfield. But no, those other two picks, I mean, DeJean, there's no reason to exhaust talking about that pick. I mean, top 20 player, you get him at 40. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And it fills a desperate position of need too. They needed secondary, and man, they had a heck of a draft for their secondary.
Yeah,
and then
two corners in the draft in Mitchell and whether which way you look at it.
Yeah, at least the best two defensive backs. And then Trotter in the 5th round, again fills a position of need. He's a nice prospect, perhaps a little bit undersized, but undersized players have succeeded before. Derek Brooks was a small linebacker. He's in the Hall of Fame. So undersized players can pan out. There's no reason why they can't. And, he has the talent. He played at a high level in college. So I see no reason why he can't be a 5th round starter, maybe even as early as perhaps later this season as he learns more about about how to play the defense, the Eagles scheme, whatnot. So, good steals for them for sure. For sure. So to move on, we kind of talked about slides a little bit. In terms of early picks, there were two that I think we could talk about a little bit here and there. Chop Robinson and Ricky Pearsall. Those were two guys that I wasn't shocked to see Chop Robinson go in the range that he did. I feel like where he was drafted around 23 or so was about his ceiling. Mm-hmm. But Ricky Pearsall, he was drafted earlier than I expected. Now, the difference between those two is Pearsall went earlier than I expected him to. Chop Robinson just went to a team that I didn't expect him to. Miami's not one of those teams where their pressing need is an edge rusher, right? Jalen Phillips, he's coming off injury, but he's a really good number 2, and they just paid Bradley Chubb. Not a pressing need by any means. It looks like Chop Robinson is just going to be a rotational guy, which I think is an excellent role for him. Just to be able to stick him in there on third downs and just go get the quarterback. Don't even worry about the run game. But, is that a position that you want to draft first round? I get the talent, the talent and the upside's there if you're Miami, but I think you have a lot more pressing needs than that if you're looking to make a Super Bowl run before Tyreek Hill is gone. He's only getting older. Right. And the Ricky Pearsall pick, I think he absolutely fits the mold of that Brandon Ayuk type receiver who has had great success in San Francisco, but I just don't know that he's a round 1 receiver. I don't know. Maybe San Francisco, they must see something that other people don't, that pushes them up into the first round. But it was just kind of a shocker, and I don't know. I feel like it was just odd. It was just odd. I think he could be really good in San Francisco, but I'd have to see it first. I trust them. I mean, they're good. They develop players well, so it wouldn't shock me at all to see Ricky Pearsall become a 1,000-yard receiver.
Yeah, just as you said, I mean, that the Dolphins pretty significantly, everyone knew their biggest needs were on the interior of both of their lines, so offensive and defensive. After the losses of Robert Hunt and Connor Williams and Christian Wilkins, major needs. And they skip over Johnny Newton. They skip over Jackson Powers Johnson and Graham Barton. It doesn't make sense. You take a guy who's going to not even really play versus guys who would have started immediately. Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Not that Chop Robinson's bad, as you said. But then Ricky Pearsall, once again, as you said, to me, his comp best is to Brandon Ayuk. I mean, what does Ayuk do? He puts a lot of effort in, really good at run blocking, being a receiver, really good routes, really good hands. Well, all those things conveniently are exactly what Ricky Pearsall does. He, really good hands. I think he had 5 drops in like 3 years, which is tied for the lowest in the FBS. And he plays in SEC ball for most of that. Then, he's just an effort guy, and that's what San Francisco likes a lot. And so, if it was any other team taking Ricky Pearsall at 31, I would have a problem with it for sure, like any other team. But because it's the Niners, they get a pass on that. I'm not going to give them any crap for it at all, really. I mean, is it a strange pick? Could they tear down and probably get him? Probably so. But oh well. I'll go to one of my questionable ones. And I'm going to start with Byron Murphy at 16. Love the player. Let me just start out with that. Love the player. However, you have Leonard Williams, who you just extended. You have Dramont Jones, who you just signed. And your edge rushers are Boye Mafe and Uchenna Nwosu, when Dallas Turner and Jared Verse are on the board. Love Byron Murphy. But you could have taken another player, another type of player, an edge rusher, that I thought you needed a lot more, and could have played all of them together and made a really great unit. I don't know how you're going to get all these guys on the field at the same time. It is possible with 3 down D linemen. It's possible. It's just you're lacking the speed there. But if you can get it with force, I guess that works too. Unless you want to put Byron Murphy at middle linebacker, then have at it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they definitely could make it work.
Yeah.
And I think it really could be that could be a pretty scary D line if you get those three big boys down there, and then you have those 2 athletes, those elite athletes out on the edge, just chasing down the quarterback, perhaps dropping into coverage some. But it makes you think, perhaps they could have drafted a little bit more of a need, Graham Barton might have been a little bit rich right there at 16, but I think he would have filled a need a lot better.
Yeah.
Troy Fatanu, I think he would have been a great pick for Seattle.
Yeah.
You kick him into guard. I think he'd be a really good guard. But yeah, just a little bit strange. I thought there were other positions of need that they had that they could have filled a little bit better than an interior D lineman, but who knows? I think there's potential there for that D line to be very, very scary, difficult to deal with. So, hopefully they work it out somehow, some way. But yeah, a little bit of an interesting pick for sure.
Yeah. Who's your next most interesting pick that you have?
Yeah, so you and I would probably both agree on this. This it's not a slide, and it wasn't an early pick either. It was just kind of odd. And it was Brock Bowers to the Raiders. I just don't really. Brock Bowers, fantastic player. In any other draft, he would be a top 10 pick. But obviously, with the amount of quarterbacks that we had go in the top 12, that pushed him down to 13. And so, nothing against Brock Bowers by any means. Exceptional talent. But the Raiders just are not in a position to be drafting luxury in the first round. The defense is weak. Quarterback position is weak. O-line's not a strength. The skill position players are not that great. They let Josh Jacobs walk. Darren Waller is no longer there. Like he used to be a great tight end for them. He's not the same player he used to be, and he's no longer there. Devontae Adams is getting older. Jacoby Myers is fine, but he has limitations as a player as well. I don't know. I just don't think that Brock Bowers was the best way they could have spent that first round pick. I think he's more so a player that you would have expected to see go to the Jets at 10 maybe, or 11 where they traded down to, but they took tackle. Or the Colts at 15 perhaps, but it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't know, unless they think Aiden O'Connell's going to be their franchise quarterback or Gardner Minshew and they're trying to build around them, which I find extremely unlikely. That's kind of rhetorical there, but it just didn't make much sense to me. It didn't feel like they really filled much of a need. Was tight end a need? They drafted Michael Mayer last year in the second round, who I think he was a really good tight end prospect in my opinion. He started to turn it on towards the end of the year. I think he can be a really good player. So I don't know. Brock Bowers isn't a tight end. He's more so he's just a weapon. But yeah. I don't think it was a need of the Raiders, especially in the first round.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that to at least a point. I mean, he's a great player, like we said. There's no doubt about that. Love the player. It's just the team fit doesn't make sense. And some Raiders fans are arguing that they went best player available, and that's a lot better than everything else they've done, considering the Alex Leatherwoods and all the other garbage they've gotten. That's fine. But if I were you, I mean, you just have so many other needs, especially with some of the guys available, whether it have been, they were at 13, so Fuaga, Fatanu, Barton. I mean, not as, just O-line in general.
Mm.
A D-back, Quinion Mitchell. Yeah, Byron Murphy. I mean, on the interior at least, like, there's a lot. Well, they got Wilkins, so let me back up on that one. But either way, there was a lot of other ways they could have, should have, and I would have gone. Just love Bowers, but you're gonna get him on the field. He's gonna probably be their slot receiver, I guess. But
Right.
at what cost? Jacoby Myers has to play outside now. That's a problem. Yeah, no, but love the player. It's just a slightly questionable pick of fit into the team. I have 1.5 more. I'm going to go, I have a good one, but I'm going to go with my half one real quick. And it's not so much the pick, because I don't understand why there's so much hate for this pick. There is a lot of hate right now for Bo Nix at 12. For what reason? I don't understand why. One, Denver had to take a quarterback because the way they got rid of Russell Wilson, there was no option. Quarterback was it. It didn't matter who was on the board. If all of them were taken and Spencer Rattler was left, he might have gone at 12. He might have, because they just had to get one of them. I'm joking, but there's a seriousness to it as well, right? Bo Nix also, for a prospect that he is, the kind of player he is, he fits very well into what Sean Payton would ever want to do. Very, very well. And, in my opinion, he wasn't the sixth best quarterback. I think he was probably the fifth. But you knew this team had to take a quarterback, yet we're dogging them because they got a guy who started a lot of games. Oh, great. He's played a lot of games and he has experience. That sounds like a good thing. I mean, that's the half one. I don't want to go too far into that one, but that's not a bad pick by any means. By any means. Like, let's stop, please.
No, yeah. I mean, like, is he a top 12 player? No. But it's the tax you pay for a quarterback. You got to draft them higher than their ranking on a big board would be. You're probably not going to see Bo Nix on a top 32 big board, So
yeah, and especially with the fact that 5 had already gone, they had to grab him.
Right. And I really don't think that 12 might be early again, like I said, for his skill level, but I still see him as a first round quarterback, and for a team like Denver, who you said has such a pressing need at quarterback, your QB1 right now is Jarrett Stidham.
Right.
I think, in other drafts, they could have been in much worse positions to take a guy who's absolutely not a first round pick. And I mean, I'm just fine with the pick, I don't really get the hate for it either, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb. My final real one here is going to be TJ Tampa getting in the fourth, and he went to the Ravens, and so Ravens fans, if you're out there listening, keep this in mind because you're not going to get a whole lot of praise from me, those dirty rat birds. But yeah, TJ Tampa was borderline a early day two guy. Like, I mean, there were some mocks, especially, not super recent ones, that had him maybe high second round. Some of them snuck just barely into the back of the first. Like, this is a good prospect here. He is an absolute dog, a very physical player. And, this kind of saves their butt because, honestly, I love Nate Wiggins as a prospect, but at the same time, Nate Wiggins for any other team would be great. Baltimore, he doesn't make sense for them. He is the most unphysical player ever at the quarterback position. But good player just doesn't fit. But TJ Tampa saved their butt for sure. I mean, he is a physical press cover guy, and the positional need especially. They lost Marcus Peters, they lost Rock Yassin, they lost Geno Stone. There's other corners there too. I'm pretty sure Ronald Darby, I think, was there last year, if I'm not mistaken. He's gone now. That Marlon Humphrey's left, but he's even has questions of his health and how good he's going to be. TJ Tampa, the need here, the get for the need and the positional value is great, absolutely great. I think this is a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why he fell because he's not the most fluid, elite level athlete. But he's got good zone coverage skill, and I think that fits Baltimore really well with how their defense has shifted over the past few years. And I think that fits really good. Perhaps he fits a little bit better than Nate Wiggins, maybe not. I mean, like Nate Wiggins, such a much better prospect, So
Yeah.
you're not gonna hear anyone saying that they should have drafted Tampa over Wiggins, But
No, I'm not
but
saying that at all. But yeah.
it's really just a Ravens type pick, No one else takes him. It's like, okay, well, he fits us perfectly, so we're gonna grab him and we'll turn him into a really good rotational starter for us in the secondary. So, I can't hate on the pick by any means. Not an elite level prospect by any stretch, but what he does offer fits Baltimore extremely well. So props to them for being able to get him in the 4th round.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty great pick, to be honest with you. I don't, just value-wise, nothing could be a whole lot better, really. Either way, I think that's all I have. Do you have any final thoughts before we close out this episode?
A lot of surprises. That's about all we can hope for in the draft, So looking forward to this season and then draft season next year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. The only downside of the draft being over is now we enter that summer period where it's just dead in the NFL. Like, we
Right.
just get to sit here with our thoughts and not do anything else. So, either way, we'll have a good time one way or another. We'll be posting at least every 2 weeks or so. We appreciate you guys for listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube, and we will see y'all next week.